Good morning and welcome to First Atlantic Commerce. Here on the FAC Live Show, we cover all things e-commerce in the Caribbean. Our guests join us from across the world and generously share their expertise, knowledge, and insight into the digital world and how we operate within it. If you join us from LinkedIn, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you grow your business online. Today, we're talking about starting and scaling e-commerce business in the Caribbean. As always, I'm joined by our guest host, Chris, the CEO of First Atlantic Commerce, and we also have the privilege of speaking with our panel guests today. Let's start with Agyei. He is the designer and entrepreneur from Trinidad and Tobago with clients which include Google, Meta, YouTube, and Rhode Island School of Design. He founded Unqueue in 2020 with the goal of improving access to technology for Caribbean people, and it has evolved to award-winning mobile platform that has so far connected over 37,000 people with small businesses all over Trinidad and Tobago. So welcome to Agyei. As well, we have Rachel Welch-Phillips. She is a Dentons partner, and prior to joining Dentons, Rachel trained and practiced with an international law firm in London, where her practice focused on asset financing, commercial contract negotiations, mergers and acquisitions, and regulatory advice to the aviation and aerospace, defense, and security sectors. We have so many questions for Rachel and so little time, so I can't wait to get her in as well. And finally, we have Zachary. He is the executive chairman and founder of Delta Capital Partners. He was one of Sean Paul's first managers before handing him over to his brother, Jeremy Harding, who went on to manage Sean Paul, and who, I don't know if you know, guys, he won a Grammy. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. Don't forget to head over to comments for everything that we discussed today. You can link it to our comments below, no matter where you're watching it. So welcome, everybody.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Hi, everyone.
All right, so we're going to get into it because we have so much to delve into. So I want to start with Rachel, just in terms of your background, and a lot of us, in this conversation around e-commerce, but I feel like you have a backdrop of traditional as well as this digital world we live in. So, give us some insight as to what you view an e-commerce business would be.
Well, hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining. It's great to be here. Yes, as you said, my background is quite diverse. As a lawyer, I did not want to become too specialized. I wanted to be able to touch on aspects of all different industries, sectors, and areas of law. And the best way to do that is by focusing on tech, because what does tech not disrupt, right? Everyone's affected by it. Everyone deploys it. Everyone has some sort of relationship with technology in the modern world. So that became my focus. So regardless of industry or sector or specialty, my job was to help companies positively disrupt in their space using technology. That has become something that obviously has created industries now that are exclusively tech-based, like e-commerce. So what is e-commerce? Well, e-commerce is trading absolutely anything using a digital platform, right? So we often think of e-commerce as products and goods, but it can also be services. And in fact, my industry is being quite severely disrupted by tech at the moment because of ChatGPT, where everyone's going to get their legal advice these days. But also just the use of legal AI and other tech platforms that, again, are being born of a world of e-commerce. And some of these platforms that you can use to access some of this AI and software, they have no physical office. There's no way you can go and buy it. You have to just log in online, subscribe, buy a license. So that's another form of e-commerce. So really and truly, it's just, the goods and services that you can buy digitally.
This chat GPT conversation is so trending. I don't even want to touch it because I feel like it's one of those things that, from a tools perspective, it's just another tool, but also it's very trending at this time. So in the e-commerce space, I want to bring Chris in because the Caribbean conversation is so relevant, and as this panel has proven, we have some wealth of knowledge within the Caribbean. Can you just tie that back in for us, Chris, from an FAC perspective?
Yeah, for sure, and thanks for the question. So, from an FAC perspective, we have seen, we've been in the e-commerce space in the Caribbean for sort of over 20 years now, and now fast forward that time, we're working in 20 countries between Caribbean and Central America, 14 different banks, and what we're seeing in the Caribbean specifically at the moment is a huge uptake in the e-commerce space. I think COVID was a big driver for that for sure, because people were locked inside, and then they had to figure out ways to be able to run their businesses, and individuals had to figure out how to purchase online when they were stuck in an individual location. But it's not just people buying from Amazon and shipping into the region, drop shipping into the region. There is a huge swell of entrepreneurs that are building e-commerce enabled businesses to either sell domestically within each of their individual countries or internationally, and trying to scale those businesses to make them a serious international ongoing concern. And now, even at the back end of that, and really how I've met everybody that's on this panel today, a lot of sort of industry specific fintech, e-commerce, technology conferences that are specific to the Caribbean, which we've never seen before. It was usually some sort of LAC type conference that was really focused on maybe Brazil or Mexico. But now things like FinTech Islands, Tech Beach, are conferences that are focusing specifically on our region, bringing international companies into it and really promoting the industry as a whole, which is fantastic to see.
And it's so easy for us to fall into what could be and what should be. And I think that a lot of times we miss the opportunity to discuss what is happening. And with that said, I want to bring in Agyei. Listen, your name and I are going to have a conversation later. But Agyei, so as it relates to Unqueue and being in the business within the Caribbean space, a lot of times we think that there's not enough opportunities and we may not know, where to begin, as well as some people don't even know what the term drop shipping is. So within your space, I mean, you have some big hitters in terms of who you work with in the tech space. Maybe you can share some insight on opportunities within the e-commerce space from the Caribbean.
I think opportunity is a good way to think about where some of the challenges are. We have a lot of I think that there's like, in terms of problems to be solved, massive deep well of opportunity, right? But I think that there's a reality around how we suss out and scope and evaluate opportunity here that may be a little bit too referential of the tech models that we may be accustomed to, right? So like, even just now you would have described, like, I've worked with Facebook and I've worked with Google, and I have, and nothing that I've learned at any of those companies would have prepared me for working in e-commerce here. I think that the cultural realities that we have in the Caribbean, the economic ones, the regulatory realities, are ones that really require an ability to make the opportunity that you may be seeing, because I think that a lot of the time we see a chance to do something and the opportunity to solve the problem is there, but again, we're business people, right? So we also have to figure out how to make money on it. And I think that the traditional models that we've had of e-commerce aren't really where the money is in the Caribbean.
Yeah, that traditional conversation. Sometimes when people talk about social media as a new age tool, I'm still surprised, because it's like, guys, we're over a decade in this thing. But I understand why it's necessary. And I want to bring Zachary in the conversation, because I feel like this background within entertainment is also a great marriage in the e-commerce space. So when we're talking about scaling the e-commerce business, Zachary, you want to share some insight, especially from, I just feel like there's this huge magnifying glass on Jamaica and how they do business compared to the rest of the Caribbean. So you want to chime in there?
Certainly, and great being online. Morning to everyone where it's morning for, and afternoon for whoever it's afternoon for. Thanks for the question. I want to kind of redirect the thought process a little bit, though, to the market or the consumer. What I mean by that is there will always be tech tools, right? ChatGPT is here now. it's going to, I was going to say it's going to destroy the world, but it's going to change the world and much faster than we think. We're at like the DOS prompt stage, the dial-up stage of what the capabilities are of AI. But it always will come back down to some sort of user or consumer of the content or the product or service on the other side. And I think a lot of times we get ultra fixated on the tech and not so much on the need or the demand for the product or service. So no matter what type of business you're starting, you still have to have some entity or person on the other side of the transaction that's willing to pay. And I say that very specifically, and I'd love to get Chris's thoughts and input on this too, because there's no e-commerce business without online payment. The two of them have to go together. So the facilitation of online payment is critical to e-commerce business, and also giving people the tools on their end as a user to be able to pay online. And I just don't want us to lose focus of that point for the listeners that are listening, that are thinking, oh, well, all I have to do is, build out my website and get tons of followers on Instagram and then post my stuff online, and then I'll have an online business. No, you don't have a business unless somebody's willing to pay you for that content, or unless you're getting a bunch of money from advertising or sponsorship.
Such an important factor. Such an important factor in terms of the consumer. I don't know if Chris want to chime in there.
Yeah, for sure. And, I'm sort of, I guess, famous for saying now that, you need to think payments first when you're looking at an online business, because we have a lot of peculiarities within the Caribbean region in terms of which platforms are integrated for payments, which ones aren't. So, we've tried very hard over the last, couple of decades and made it our mission to ensure that, we've integrated a lot of the major shopping carts, Shopify, Wix, etc., within there. But it is such a key component of doing this. And I really like his point about your that's relevant and as a use case. And because there is so many things that happen around the technology space that are great ideas in general, or the technology is good, but what problem are they really solving? Is there a real world use case for it? It's not good enough just to have a great idea or have a great technology solution, but is it going to improve? Is it going to take the industry to the next level? Is it going to attract people? Are people going to want to use it? Because otherwise, it's just burn people time. If you can't accurately say what this solution is for and who's going to benefit from it, then I suggest you move on.
And that's such an important factor when it comes to not just if you're going to scale your business, but just having a business in general. You have an audience, and I want us, the entire panel, to think about what it means to scale an e-commerce business, because a lot of times, like for instance, I just traveled with 20 other people for the last 4 months. And a lot of people are thinking about, hey, you have your own business. I want to start a business. I always start them by saying the most positive thing, which is now is the best time in the time of history to start a business, because the actual return on investment, it's much higher, because that you have access to so many people, so many things, but ultimately there's a knowledge behind it that's required. So when it comes to scaling your e-commerce business, I would like the panel to think about what's the number one tip you would tell someone if that question were to be asked to you. So you're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue conversation around scaling your e-commerce business in the Caribbean. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us on First Atlantic Commerce. On FAC Live Show, we cover all things e-commerce with guests joining us from different parts of the world, sometimes in islands, sharing their knowledge on the digital world. And, you know, we're all part of it. You want to build your online business. You're not going to find these conversations anywhere. Trust me, I look for them. This is a customized experience. You want to make sure and smash that follow button, subscribe button on YouTube so you don't miss a single live show. Be sure to comment if you have any questions, and we will ensure to answer them. If not in the live show, we will look at the comments afterwards as well. Today we're discussing starting and scaling an e-commerce business in the Caribbean. And if you're from the Caribbean, you know we're a very unique place. There's so many reasons why, but continue to watch and you'll learn more how to help you scale your business. So today we have Agyei, Rachel, and Zachary joining us from all across the world, as well as Chris, my co-host from First Atlantic Commerce, the CEO. So before the break, I asked a question, so I'm going to reiterate it. You know, if someone were to come up to the panelists, each one of them, and ask about scaling their e-commerce business, what would be the first tip that you would give this person? Who wants to take a stab at it to begin?
I'm happy to go for that one. I think my answer to that question is going to be my answer to a lot of questions in the e-commerce space, which is ask a lot of questions. Ask questions of people who know things you don't know. In particular, and again, I am a lawyer, so this tends to be my answer, consider all eventualities, right? Ask questions so that you can get the broadest possible understanding of what the implications will be of each step that you're taking. Particularly in the Caribbean, where scaling can mean that you are entering new markets regionally. There is sometimes an assumption that everywhere in the Caribbean kind of operates the same. Certainly from a regulatory standpoint, that is not the case. Even though there will be cultural similarities across the markets that may make expansion and scaling from market to market appealing, it does not mean that the same ease of business in one place from a regulatory standpoint exists in another. And even where, for example, if you're providing, let's say, some sort of fintech product or service, and you say, oh, well, let me start in the Eastern Caribbean, which is where there's a joint central bank, etc. Nonetheless, you're seeing disparities in securities legislation and in other, regulatory frameworks that are going to affect your ability to do business in those spaces. It's also going to affect your costs. And again, compliance can be a really, really significant cost if, again, you don't upfront it, right? The best way to keep your compliance costs down are to anticipate what the needs are and not have to try to play catch up or, God forbid, have to incur any penalties or fines as a result of non-compliance. So in spaces like fintech and other highly regulated spaces, that's one consideration. But then generally speaking, from market to market, just assessing the willingness to pay, right? So as Zachary mentioned before, there's no e-commerce without an end user that wants to pay for it. So what people are willing to pay for in one place, they may not be as willing to pay for at that price point or marketed in the same way in another location. So the Caribbean is a very, very diverse region. And how you go to market on each island and in each space is going to have to vary. So ask a lot of questions, explore your markets very, very thoroughly, and anticipate eventualities instead of having to try to play catch up later down the line.
Wow, I feel like that's great advice, regardless of if it's e-commerce or not. And within that space of in the Caribbean, and you have that EC conversation, you also have the currency conversation, which I think is a great point that Chris could chime in on, because a lot of the times, well, I know for a fact in Trinidad, we have a Forex issue, so you're limited with the amount of Forex that you can access. So as a consumer, I'm going to be very, very particular to choose how I want to use that Forex. So in the conversation of e-commerce and scaling your business, Chris, you want to chime in on that aspect?
Yeah, currencies are really quite important. So as you mentioned, Trinidad has some liquidity issues with US dollars. So it is actually quite hard to get a US dollar, what we call an e-commerce merchant account with one of the banks. But if you're looking at the Caribbean whole and you're looking to set up an individual country, and receive local payment in each country. You actually have to set up your business the bank in each country. So and the reason for that being that only the local banks in that country had the ability to authorize and capture funds in local currency. So, for example, people talk about setting up in the U.S. and selling to the Caribbean. If you do that, you're already restricting yourself to U.S. dollars. So if you have local suppliers to pay, then you're going to be receiving U.S. dollars in the U.S. Then you have to repatriate those funds to the specific country, convert those back into local currency. And all of that is expensive. So I think there is basically a misnomer out there that thinks that setting up your processing in the U.S. makes it a lot cheaper to run your e-commerce business. And actually, I would argue the opposite. Especially if you only need U.S. dollars, that's one thing. But if you need to operate in local currency in each one of those countries, then trying to do that out of any other country outside the local country is going to provide you with some FX issues, with some extra expenses. And also, you just have to be careful where you are with things like cross-border acquiring regulations, which basically set up by Visa and MasterCard and the card associations to say that you can't, unless you're the right corporate entity in the right country, you can't acquire your e-commerce transactions there. So it gets quite complicated. So you really need to take advice on that right up front and make sure you are putting the right structure in place based on the countries and the currency requirements that you have.
So speaking of Trinidad, thanks for that, Chris. Agyei, with Unqueue, I want to really get some feedback on you. I feel like I have real world example here in terms of how you scale your business and what feedback you would give to someone who's looking to pursue something within the e-commerce space.
We scale our business by focusing on the stuff that Zachary would have mentioned, which would be our consumers. We are a very consumer-forward company. We've spent a lot of time talking to both our vendors and our shoppers, trying to understand what they need. So like even our features roadmap is in a way tailored to that. So I think that that's really what we've been successful for. And that's why we've gotten the kind of adoption that we've gotten, because people like using our product. I think that when I think about scale, the other thing to consider is operations. I don't know that people consider e-commerce businesses like businesses enough, and that most businesses require really focused attention on operations. And I think that an e-commerce business is no different. I think that if anything else, an e-commerce business is especially operations dependent, especially when you have things like delivery. So we have delivery to consider. We have things that are happening in the real world with people's real products. And I think that when we're able to optimize operations as much as possible, then we're able to deliver a good customer service. And I feel like a lot of people focus on the tech in a way that may not be productive, because at the end of the day, we're not doing a brand new thing with technology. We're fulfilling a thing that has been written over and over in terms of the story about it. But I think that what we're doing very intentionally is making sure that we're talking to the people that we need to talk to, while also making sure that the delivery of the service that we're giving them is what we say it is. Because I think a lot of the time, e-commerce businesses, whether it's a platform business like ours, or a business like one of our vendors, it comes down to, can you keep the promise that you're making to the people that you're making them to? So that's I would say that's our success for scaling, is focused on users, but then also focused on really tight operations that give people what they expect and what they ask for.
I feel like you're talking to me with that, Agyei, because I've been battling as a business owner with my time, thinking that these small things that I have to go on the back end with emailing and creating domains and stuff, I'm like, this is taking away my time. But what you're basically telling me and what I need to hear is that's part of an e-commerce business, right? That operation side of things. For the traditional sense, maybe, hey, let's order some more people because we run out. And within the digital space, it's maintaining this business online that is operational and basically accessible to the customer for the majority of the time, 24/7.
One of our big concerns when we're writing a feature or when we are making any change to the base is, yes, how much is it going to cost us? But ultimately, can this make internal operations easier? Because I think that as a tech company, as a startup, we're a small company, we're a team of 15 people. But I think that managing operations for us is really about survival, because the more things that we can automate, the more things that we can make foolproof, the more things that we can remove human processes from, is the better things are for us. And the more survivability we have in the market so that we can continue delivering the promise that we've made to people.
Amen to automation. I'm with you on that one. So I want to bring Zachary on this e-commerce conversation from because when we think scale in business, and e-commerce, there's usually this physical aspect, but there's also a services element. And I feel like your background as Sean Paul's former manager, would be a great conversation to have when it comes to scaling a business that's based on influence and based on human capital. So do you have any advice for someone who's looking in that space to scale, their content creation and their influencer marketing business?
I remember you playing that?
What's happening? I'm not sure who's playing that. Wow, okay.
I think it might, I don't know if it was Chris.
Timely though, but yeah.
Perfect time, yeah. Yeah. It goes back to focusing on what the demand or the need is. So first of all, I was part of Sean's management team 27 years ago, right? Long time ago. My brother Jeremy Harding is who really formally managed him for most of his career, and I went on to win Grammys, etc. There was no internet per se in those days. There was no Instagram, right? There was no YouTube. There was none of that. So it was about Sean being a talented, gifted artist, producing an amazing product that people wanted. Right. And that's where it started. Nowadays, obviously, that's different. You do have to focus on a social media aspect if you're in the entertainment space. But I would say you really want to get the product right. And there's that product market fit that a lot of people gloss over because they're so enamored with, I have 22 million views on my YouTube. Okay, that's wonderful. Are you converting that into some sort of money? So the product has to be the focus at all times, and then you can see how you use the tools to get get people to notice that product and eventually buy that product for you in some shape or form. Oh, you're asking about services, right?
Yeah.
So the same goes for that, because you have to have a demand for whatever it is the services that you're providing. And I'll give you an example, and I know this is a touchy, maybe controversial one in some cases. Digital wallets, right? Everybody is super happy. Digital wallets are here. Every bank is rolling out their digital wallet, etc., etc. And I maintain, and it will eventually change. It could be 6 months, it could be a year, or whatever. But I maintain that right now in the Caribbean, people are not seeing this device as a commercial tool. They use it for communication. They use it to send pictures back and forth to people, listen to songs, send email, research stuff, whatever. They're not really using it to pay. And I underscore that point by saying, even if you go to the States, you go to the US right now, you go to Walmart, you see 100 people in the line. I don't know if 5 people are going to use their phone to tap and pay just yet. Most people are just going to pay with a card. Right? So you still have to work with people along their journey of transitioning to using the technology.
I think there's so much to unravel there, because you have a combination of, what exactly is value bringing, because views in the digital marketing world is called vanity metrics. So there's definitely some opportunity there, but there are a lot of people who don't know how to monetize it. And then, of course, this conversation around your phone, I can even add to that. A lot of us think that the internet is social media. So I definitely see an opportunity for folks in the Caribbean to explore that e-commerce space and use the phone as an amazing tool because it can do so many things. So we have a few questions in the comment section that we're going to get to. I see you, Sachin. I think that question's for Chris as well as Leela. So we're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll answer some of these questions. We'll be right back. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good night, depending on if you're watching us on the replay. Welcome to First Atlantic Commerce here on the FSC Live Show. We cover all things e-commerce in the Caribbean. Our guests join us from all over the world and generously share their expertise, knowledge, and insight into the digital world and how we operate within it. If you join us from LinkedIn, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you grow your online business. Today, we're talking about starting and scaling an e-commerce business in the Caribbean. As always, I'm joined by Chris, the CEO of First Atlantic, and we also have the privilege of speaking with Agyei, Rachel, and Zachary across the world. I'm not even going to touch on where they are because it's just, we don't have enough time. But this is the beauty of technology and being able to tap into resources and learning from folks around the world. So let's start with Sachin because I feel like he's probably waiting for his answer. So Sachin asked, I would like to cover how you use the Fygaro and connect to local bank accounts. He is from Trinidad and Tobago. So I believe that is for Chris.
Yeah, and that's quite a simple thing to set up. So really the first protocol you would do there is go to fygaro.com and apply for whichever the Fygaro services that you want to support there. So they have payment buttons, e-invoicing products, full website builder creators that have hook-ins to like the DHL API if you're going to be shipping internationally as well. And then that Fygaro platform is already integrated into FAC's payment gateway platform, which in turn is integrated and certified with all the different banks in Trinidad that support e-commerce acquiring. So and do e-commerce merchant accounts. So that would be Republic Bank, First Citizens, Scotiabank, CIBC, and RBC. So our job within that is really, and our mission really as a company is to be a super connector from a payments perspective. So yeah, very simply, go to fygaro.com and apply for the service you want there, and then they will route you to your chosen bank to apply for your e-commerce merchant account. And in that case, you don't even really need to deal with FAC directly because all the integration work and all the sort of cost is already baked into the Fygaro cost.
Great. And I just want to chime in and let you know that the conversation with Fygaro happened on our YouTube channel, so you can go subscribe there. We will put the links in the comment section in a timely manner. So I'm going to ask this question to the panel, and I guess the first person to let me know who they want to answer it. And I love this question. Is anyone researching consumer demand regionally, and what's trending where? We love the Amazon Jungle Scout reports, but we need our own data. And I think this is so important because I recently read a report from Marla Dukaran about the tourism numbers, and it was very difficult for her to pull that data because we have a lot of gated information as well as we don't have access to this information. So anybody want to chime in here, maybe find a solution?
I can. I mean, as far as what consumer data looks like we collect it, but I think that there are a couple of dangers that we run into, right? Like one of them is creating a monolith out of the Caribbean from the perspective of research, because when we do consumer research, we have this kind of flattened approach of like, this is what a Caribbean consumer is like. And I'm feeling like my instinctual feeling is that research has to kind of happen in a granular way and then maybe like collect it together. But I think that like it really isn't. The hard part is getting all of the e-commerce companies to not think that this is some kind of like potential industry loss or competitive loss for them. I think that the only problem with that is probably one of understanding what the point of the data would be, because I think that all of our companies can benefit from reports that are made like these, but the reason that Amazon is able to publish them publicly is because they are so dominant that nobody, like it doesn't matter that they are able to share that data. So I think that we have different considerations. I think that there are good precedents for sharing data that we could probably look at and model and adopt. I am very open to the conversation. I've had conversations with other e-commerce administrators along those same lines, and everybody's kind of into it, but I think that maybe it's just a matter of a concerted effort. But I mean, it would be definitely helpful. The interesting thing though, I think, would be what it reveals about us that we may be taken for granted as consumers in the Caribbean.
If I could just add to that too, I would always recommend doing your own individual research than relying on some report that's done. Things change very quickly, first of all. So to try and get like regional data about consumer demand, by the time you were able to go to every single country, execute the research, analyze it, put it together, etc., things may have even changed by then. So instead of kind of waiting on a report, I would suggest you do your own research. Two, there are tools that are available that you don't necessarily have to be, doing formal research, but you can get anecdotal data and feedback from people. And thirdly, not all Caribbean people are created the same. So the demands in, Antigua may very well differ from the demands in Trinidad, just as the demands for somebody in Miami may differ from somebody in Puerto Rico. So it really depends on who your market is and who you're targeting. And in many instances, as an e-commerce business, your audience ought to be broader than even the Caribbean. So you might want to look at data outside of this region too.
Rachel, you have anything to chime in there before we?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of merit and validity in reports and the data that is produced. Again, all those things Zachary mentioned are true. Segmenting your market is important, and those reports don't do that for you. So being able to do it yourself and target the market that you're really looking at by understanding what your unique selling point is and who it will appeal to, that will get you more relevant information. But do you actually need to be conducting that level of research so formally for the purpose of reporting? Probably not. Keeping your finger on the pulse of what is happening in your consumer market is a lot easier than that. Keep up with media, keep up with, forms of communication, social media. If you understand who your market is, you understand the age group, you scout out the influencers of that age group, you start having conversations, again, back to asking questions, listening, and being a keen observer within the market that you're in. And to the extent you can, immerse yourself in it. Yeah, find organizations that may have key members of your target audience in it. Talk to them, use those platforms, engage with those platforms. That form of more active day-to-day research is probably going to be more accurate, but it's also likely to be much easier to execute. And as Zachary said, things change so quickly that keeping your finger on the pulse day-to-day is arguably a more impactful tool for you to assess your consumer market.
Be in the streets. Be where the consumer is in the streets. Because sometimes setting up formal research, you want to try and assess the demand for, a digital wallet to be used for going to the supermarket. It takes you a month to set up the study. It takes you the next couple of weeks to identify the target, etc., etc. By the time you do it 2-3 months later before you get in some sort of report. And sorry to say this, but it's just been my experience in marketing for nearly 30 years. People lie in research, so they don't always answer honestly, because sometimes they're trying to, even though they may know that it's anonymous, they don't want to get the answer wrong. so that they answer what they think they're supposed to say and not necessarily what they actually do or say or believe in or act in real life. So you have to be in the streets, in front of people, talking to people. If your target consumer is young adults in their first job, with a college degree, who live in rural communities, go to a rural community and go talk to some young people who are in their first job. And if you can talk to 10 or 15 people, you can probably get a good idea of what the market needs are.
Yeah, I think Steve Jobs, paraphrasing here, says people don't know what they need. In addition to that, I could also add, as a LinkedIn beta user, LinkedIn actually, they strongly suggest that you don't target based on location. There's some nuance to that, but I think that the way how we look at advertising has to change, because advertising actually creates unique data, because the data already exists, right? We're all on our phones, we're doing these things. So it'll be a great opportunity for the question that was being asked by Leela to look at creating your own space of data unique to your customer. So you're going to head over to Andre's question, because my questions are null and void at this point because this comment section is lit. Andre wants to know, for launching a digital e-commerce platform with a limited budget, what platform or company should you recommend? I'm assuming this is beyond payment gateway. Andrew, I'm just assuming here this is building your website.
I can answer the question as a consumer, as a tech company. It depends on what you need. I think that there are enough things that are open source and available that the budget is really about labor and executing. First Atlantic Commerce fortunately has things like Fygaro and partnerships with Fygaro, sort of getting the payments part is up and running easy. But I think that you can go on Gatsby, which is a JavaScript framework, and download an e-commerce template and start from there. Most of this stuff can actually happen for free, not to endanger anybody's career or anything. But I think that the easiest part is getting the digital e-commerce platform. I would go with WordPress or Shopify if you want something that's out of the box. WordPress is really good as well because there's a First Atlantic Commerce plugin for WordPress, so you can kind of get yourself set up for payments right through WordPress. Or if you're in Trinidad, you could use something like Unqueue. Unqueue is free for the most part. It charges you on transactions, but there's a lot of things, a lot of different types of options you have out there. I think right now it's about the research and finding the things that solve the problems that you want to solve particularly.
Okay, so I'm just gonna, because we have a limited time here, I'm gonna ask Gilberto's question before we go on the break. No, sorry, not Gilberto's. This person I don't have a name for them. But will FSC work with Medusa Java, I think, .js? I feel like that's such a technical question, Chris, but can you want to take that?
I think it's an open source platform. We can serve up our API, our payments API, but you would need somebody on a software developer level to basically integrate it into our gateway. But yes.
Okay, that's great. That's all the answer we need right now. All right, so we're gonna go on a quick break. Can we just answer Gilbert's question about the difference between Fygaro and FAC via our YouTube link and a previous show on that? But when we come back, we have a few more questions as it relates to starting and scaling an e-commerce business in the Caribbean. We'll be right back.
So I think here we have a quick video here actually from business development and partner development, which is Eldred Garcia, on why you should think payments first.
Hello, my name is Eldred Garcia. I'm the Senior Vice President of Business and Partnership Development at First Atlantic Commerce. Thinking payments first is establishing the structure for building a business. Thinking payment first allows you to focus on how to collect revenue for the products and services that you will be selling. Thinking payment first identifies the different payment channels that are available to a business in order to collect those funds. The benefits of thinking payments first is identifying the new technologies and the new ways that there are in order to collect payments for the products and services that a business sells. Thinking payments first in channels such as e-commerce allows you to focus on the new technologies that are available in order for you to accept payments. Thinking payment first really gives the structure to the business model that you have developed in order to sell your products and services. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
Thank you. Here we go. Thank you so much to Eldred for giving us some insight on payment first, because we are in a world that, coming back from being locked up for so long, sometimes, using our our real in-person interaction could be a little difficult. So payment first is definitely the way to go. And once again, thank you so much for joining First Atlantic Commerce here at the FAC Live Show. We cover all things e-commerce in the Caribbean, and our guests are all over the world who's generously sharing their expertise, knowledge, and insight into the digital world and how it operates within it. So I want to bring everybody back in because we have a limited amount of time, and apparently the comment section just got intense. So we want to respond to some of these questions. So I want to ask about startups bringing a new product to market and getting direct access to FAC. So I know this would be a conversation for Chris because there's a banking element there that needs to happen beforehand. So Chris, you want to touch on this?
Yeah, so from an FAC perspective, we work with all sizes of companies. So, startup, micro merchants, small, medium size, and then we range right up to, sort of multi-billion-dollar NASDAQ listed companies that are on the platform. So we have solutions for all size of merchants from a technical perspective. When it comes to the other component, the banking side of it, there is, that question is then best asked to your particular bank. So they will have a process and an application process that they will ask you to complete to apply for an e-commerce merchant account, which is basically the bank account and the relationship you need to have with the bank to be able to accept those transactions that you're doing online. So most banks, in our experience, will be maybe a little off-put by the amount of paperwork and documentation that the bank will ask for, but there are more and more solutions that are helping with that now. So marketplaces will be one of those. So there's been just an explosion of marketplaces throughout the Caribbean over the last couple of years. And if you are a small single trader, sole trader with a couple of products, there's some really good solutions within the Caribbean that will negate the need for you to actually set up an e-commerce merchant account directly with the bank. You can have a relationship with those marketplaces, and they will put your product and service on their website and do all the marketing. They will collect the funds on your behalf and then be able to remit that money to you directly to your bank account. So yeah, I would think through how you actually want to do that. If this is a side gig, for example, marketplaces are fantastic for that. It's a good way to get seen by other potential customers as well, who might not have been going on the marketplace to see your product, but may come across it as well. So, but ultimately, yes, we're very happy to support startups. We've been involved with a lot of fintech organizations. So I'm on the board of the Fintech Association with Trinidad as well as Agyei as well. We've worked with a lot of incubators. We've provided a lot of material, time, and advice right across the Caribbean to help startups.
Thank you so much for that, Chris. I want to just dive right into Sachin's question because I get really excited when we talk about data. I'm a bit of a geek. And I'm gonna put this out to the panel. Is Google keyword searches a reasonable proxy for market data? I have an answer to that, but this is not about me. This is about you guys.
No.
No? Wow, intense. Go on.
No, I mean, it's as simple as that. I think that not enough is happening on Google searches for us to be able to get enough research for us to build businesses that have the kind of scale that deliver sustainability for the business and the market. But yeah, I think that like it could definitely be part of a complement of approaches to understanding the market that you might want to enter. But I think that Google keyword searches could be potentially deceptive, because I think that it may be a far stretch, depending on the question that you're asking, to say that the searches and the volume of searches leads to the assumption that I can make money from this, or that somebody will pay to solve the problem that they're searching about.
Anybody else wants to chime in there?
I completely agree with what Agyei just mentioned, and I'll also add that there's no reason why you can't keep an eye on those things when you're looking at bigger picture trends and just food for thought. But that should all feed into that day-to-day market research process that I described earlier, right? That just interact with your target community, whether that is through what they're searching online or having conversations with them, or just immersing yourself in the world of your target consumer. All of that is valuable information. I would definitely caution relying on something like Google keyword searches, because again, it can be very, very deceptive as to someone's willingness to pay, which is ultimately what will keep your business alive. However, when you're looking at what people care about, what they're interested in, what's piquing their interest at the time, again, you have to stay on top of it, because as Zachary mentioned, it's not going to stay the same. And in fact, it may change literally during the day, right? So if you were to look at someone's Google searches, they may vary so much during that day that in fact you have no idea at the end of the day what that person is really willing to put their money behind. Yeah, because people Google search for all sorts of reasons that have nothing to do with what they're willing to pull their wallet out for. But I would say that when talking about trends and markets and so on, and identifying challenges like we mentioned earlier, such as the use of tech like a digital wallet that Zachary was talking about, if you're starting to see the market ask those questions online, then that's a good place for you as an entrepreneur to realize that you have a role to play in influencing that as well. If you realize from some of these key trends that people in Trinidad or whatever your market is are starting to ask themselves more about this, can I trust this? Is this safe? Those types of questions start popping up on the Google Trends, then by all means, start a podcast that speaks to the safety of what your offering is. Go on the radio, go on the newspaper. I mean, these small Caribbean island communities, you have these opportunities to influence, yeah? And as an entrepreneur, you could be doing yourself a great favor if you were going to the market with information and you were targeting your consumer base. Hey, this is how this works. Raising education levels is really, really key if you want there to be an uptick in tech solutions, because right now we don't conventionally teach tech in our education system. So there's no natural way for people to learn how the technology works and whether or not they can trust it or how much safer it is. I actually got into a great debate the other day with someone who was saying how unsafe Apple wallets are, because what if someone steals your phone? I said, well, what if someone steals your wallet? Can you wipe your wallet remotely? Can you lock your wallet remotely? Can you, and then they immediately started thinking about these things and saying, oh, wait, you're right. It actually might be safer. But this assumption that the internet is inherently this unsafe place to be, therefore my credit card cannot live there, is really something that as a community we need to be having conversations about. Not saying there's a right or wrong answer, but there is information to be had and to be shared. And those who understand it best, those entrepreneurs, those founders, those people who've spent time in this space to get comfortable in this space, there really is a responsibility both for the future proofing of your business, but also for the growth of the e-commerce community in your market for you to share that knowledge.
Yeah, I also think Chris could chime in on that conversation around what's safer, because we've had this previous live shows where we talk about cash, because everybody's like, well, cash is king, especially with the low penetration rate of credit cards in Trinidad. But Chris has a take on that. You want to share that again?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't carry cash at all now, if I don't have to. And I will purposely avoid businesses that will only accept cash, because I just find it super inconvenient, and I have to go out of my way to get cash now, opposed to just being able to take my card out of my wallet. So there is this misconception that there's no cost to accepting cash as well. So in terms of the physical person, the physical space, the securing the cash, all the security that goes around that, and then transferring that cash from A to B as well is all has a significant cost to it. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of cash at all. And Rachel made some fantastic points there in terms of for using a digital wallet is your phone also goes with you everywhere. It has biometrics on it, it has PIN codes on it, it has passwords on it. It is much easier to cancel the payment functionalities on something like your phone than it is if somebody steals your wallet. So yeah, I think we will certainly eventually move to a cashless society. The Caribbean is being a little resistant to that, obviously, but that's upon us as people in the technology space to provide solutions that incentivize people to move to better solutions, not just providing solutions without really thinking through the user experience.
Thanks for that, Chris. We have quite a few questions, but what we'll do, because we're short on time, we will definitely answer them after the live show. We'll make sure that Chris is on his computer typing away, because most of them are questions for him. But I have one last question for everyone on this panel. If money or time wasn't an issue, what would be your e-commerce business?
Oh, you want to start with me?
Yes.
Money, I am, in a way, I started Unqueue because I had a period in my life where money and time weren't an issue. I think that the real value for me in the kind of work that we're doing is what we're able to give people on their entrepreneurial journey. So I think that probably I would be some kind of an e-commerce consultant that wasn't footing the bill for operations. I would take the bills away from me, but yeah, I think that what I'm doing right now is the e-commerce business that I would have wanted to start.
Wow, Agyei, you're just living your truth. Okay, Rachel.
Yeah, I'm a very lucky woman, yeah.
All right, Rachel, you're next.
My e-commerce business would very selfishly just be addressing my own needs. I want one app, a one-stop shop for all my beauty needs. I want to be able to book my hair appointments, my nail appointments, my eyelash appointments, my wax appointment, all on one platform. They all line up. There's availability for who I want, who I can choose, who has a discount on, who has a special going. Just one place. It gets really annoying to have to call 6 or 7 different places to try and book appointments, making sure they don't overlap. All on one given Saturday. So there you go. Somebody out there, build me an aggregator from aggregator.
Rachel, I feel you. I feel you right now. I feel you. I'm going through this issue right now. I feel you. Yes, someone take that idea. Thank you. It's applicable. All right, Zachary.
When you ask a question, do you mean something that I would want to use as a user or something that I would launch as a business?
It's really up to you. Something I would say that would bring you happiness to just start.
It would have to be in the field of education, and not in a formal education. You can Google lecture series at Harvard. That's not what I mean, but a portal, a website, an app, or whatever, where people can go and be educated more about themselves as a person and noticing certain patterns in their life that they can improve or work on. So more of a spiritual based journey, not religion, but more of a spiritual based journey of, if you're at this stage in your life and feeling like this, what could be causing it and what could you do to unlock your full potential?
Sounds like something I would sign up for. Chris, you want to join in there?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd actually stay exactly where I am because, I've been here for 19 years now. I love what I do. I love the company we have. I love the jurisdictions that we work in and the people that we work with. And for all these ideas, payments is required. So, I think I'm in a great spot to help supporting everybody's dreams there.
Gosh, we have people here living their truths. I want to add mine. I would love to start a Reddit for small business or female Caribbean entrepreneurs, specifically for them to find services like legal services, services within the tax space, because, you know, they're so busy all the time. So somewhere that has the general information, but they could also tap into resources that a lot of people don't have access to social circles. So that's mine. And on that note, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to Zach, Rachel, and Agyei, and obviously Chris for joining us today as we discuss starting and scaling an e-commerce business in the Caribbean. For those who we didn't get to answer your comments, not to worry. That's the beauty of digital. We're definitely going to answer those questions in the comments, and be sure to follow our page and be notified when we go live again on FSC Live panel discussions. See you soon. Bye.